Nothing is more basic, more elemental, more important to Mexican cuisine than corn. The more you learn about the many varieties of this ingredient and how corn has been used for centuries, the more you understand the culture of Mexico. One of Mexico's experts on corn is Amado Ramirez Leyva. He owns the Oaxaca City restaurant Itanoni, which translates from the Nahuatl as flower of the corn. Amado's been studying the importance of corn in Mexico's cuisine and culture for years. ¿Por qué maíz? ¿Por qué has enfocado tu carrera en maíces criollos?
La idea de manera profesional porque los maíces criollos son los maíces de un mundo que incluso nosotros como mexicanos no conocemos ni reconocemos ni hemos tomado actualmente, ¿no? Entonces son los maíces de los pueblos antiguos, de los pueblos abuelos.
Porque tenemos muchos diferentes maíces aquí, diferentes colores, tamaños, estilos. ¿Me explicas qué son?
Sí, son maíces de diferentes, en principio aquí estamos mostrándole de diferentes regiones, ¿no? De diferentes regiones que son ambientes agroecológicos diferentes, porque cada región y cada etnia tiene una manera diferente de relacionarse con la naturaleza y de irla recreando y creando. Por ejemplo, en las zonas altas aquí de la Mixteca, a la gente les gusta que la tortilla sea dura. ¿Por qué escogieron los maíces duros? Es una relación íntima con la naturaleza. ¿Sí? La naturaleza en las zonas altas da maíces más duros. Entonces van haciendo su platillo y su cocina a partir de esa relación.
In the hours we spent together, we didn't even scratch the surface of Amado's vast knowledge on the subject of corn. And Amado's expertise on corn is not just academic. Here at his restaurant, they even grind their own fresh masa on site for use in all kinds of dishes. To begin making masa, they remove the corn from small silos and sift it to remove any impurities. Then the corn is combined with water and cal, what we know as calcium hydroxide. It's brought to a boil in a large pot, soaked overnight, and then given a good rinse in fresh water. This process is called nixtamalization, and it's an ancient process that changes the texture of the corn and makes it more nutritious and digestible. The corn is then placed into a mill where it's ground into a damp meal they call masa. The masa is brought out to the tortilla making station where they turn a beautiful variety of fresh masa into some amazing snacks. Adriana started by kneading a bit of water into white corn masa made from tuxpeño corn. Then she used the press to form the masa into a tortilla. Next, she placed that tortilla on a traditional clay comal to cook. This makes the freshest, best-tasting tortilla you'll ever have. Next, she pressed out some of the red corn masa for a snack they call a tetela. She topped it with the classic Oaxacan bean paste and a hierba santa leaf before folding the corners in to form a triangle. Then the tetela went onto the clay comal. When it was finished cooking, she opened it up and added Chiapas doble crema cheese, along with some Mexican crema. They had this punchy salsa made from chile de árbol that I put over the top before taking a delicious bite. Me encanta el sabor de la hierba santa y la crema también. Adriana also made another specialty of Itanoni. It's a snack that they call deese. It's prepared with yellow corn masa that's made from cajete corn. Now this masa was pressed out and a whole huge leaf of hierba santa was placed on top. She pressed it out again to adhere the leaf to the masa, then laid it out on the comal, masa side down. Some bean paste went on top, along with some Oaxacan string cheese, before it all got rolled up together. The result was a kind of crispy taco that had the flavor of pure corn and hierba santa. Just fantastic. Pura hierba santa.
Pura hierba santa.
Pura hierba santa. Now, if you want to get that really authentic flavor of Oaxaca or any of the states around Oaxaca, you really have to get to know this plant. It's called hoja santa or hierba santa in some places, and Well, when you smell it, it's got that beautiful green fennel, anise-like flavor. Some people say sarsaparilla or root beer. Now, the thing that a lot of people don't know is that you can grow it practically anywhere in the United States. But of course, in many places in the United States, it won't overwinter. If you get a really hard frost, the stuff will just die back and never return. So what do? Well, one of the things that you can do is to bring it inside in the winter, but who has room for big bushy plants like this? So I have invited Bill Shores, who is our garden manager of all the garden projects that we have at our restaurant. So Bill, take us through the various parts.
Okay, well, this makes a nice potted plant, but over time the plant's going to get kind of tall and leggy. So it really helps the plant to cut it back. So what we can do is cut this long stem back,
Right.
this will grow, and then we have some material up here that we can use for propagation.
Well, let's cut it off and show them how to do that.
Okay, I'm going to cut it right here. You notice there's a little bud right there.
Okay.
And so that'll allow this one to get bigger, and then we can get some more shoots coming off this side stem.
All right.
Okay. There we go.
Okay.
So first I'm going to trim off these side shoots.
Okay.
And this is great because you can use this stuff in the kitchen.
I certainly will.
So when you do a cutting, you don't want a big leaf. You just
Okay.
want to go with some small leaves at the top.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll trim those up.
I see.
And then you got more there
Those,
for you.
Thank you.
Okay, now this is almost ready, but it's a little bit too tall.
Okay.
So I'm going to trim that up so that it fits more in the pot where I'm going to propagate it. I want to go directly below one of these nodes, okay? You can see little bumps there. Those
Yeah.
will form roots. So I want to
Perfect.
go right below that.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to cut it right there. So I've got some moistened mix in here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this in so
Okay.
that node is under the soil. Make sure to firm that growing medium around there. Now,
Here's
if I,
your plastic bag.
yeah, because I don't want to leave this. This could dry out because remember it has no roots. So those little leaves, in order for them to grow, we need to keep it humid and moist in here. So what I've done is just taken a plastic bag and I've poked some holes in it so I can get air in there, and then just tuck the bottom under here. If you have a tray with a little bit of water, you can put it in that so it stays moist. You don't want this to dry out.
And then after a few weeks, it looks like this plant, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, so what's happened is some new leaves are starting to unfurl here.
Right.
And then if I'll pop this out so you can kind of see what happened. All these nice roots in here.
Oh, that's
okay?
a great example of a lot of root
Yeah.
growth. Or you could do this sort of cheater's way of propagation. here.
Right. Not everybody wants to fuss around with plastic bags and, you know, all of that.
Right.
So a lot of people do this with their house plants. They'll just take a cutting, put it in water, and then just watch it. And when they start to see roots start forming, then they can put it into the potting mix. So you could just
Okay.
pop this right in.
And then you could just bring this in and put it in a bright spot in your house and overwinter it there. And then when there was no more chances of a frost, you could put it out into sort of an area like this with some dappled light, and it would just continue to grow. And then, well, by the end of the summer, you would have this gorgeous stand of hoja santa and be able to experience all the beautiful flavors of Oaxaca. The simplest way to make yellow mole is the way that they do it in the villages that surround Oaxaca City. And they start with 1 or 2 chilies. It always has guajillo chili, which is this smooth-skinned kind of cranberry red chili. Some people like to put a little bit of ancho chili in there as well. So I'm going to clean these chilies first by pulling out the stem end, tearing them open and letting the seeds fall. I want to make sure to pull out all these veins in here so that it doesn't turn out too hot. These chilies smell so good. I always describe them a little bit like spicy prunes. Next, we're going to toast these guys. And we're going to do that on an ungreased surface. It could be a skillet, or I'm using a griddle here. I'm going to press them down until they're really aromatic. And you'll notice that they change colors a little bit. It's a gentle toasting, certainly not blackening or burning in any way. That would make the mole turn out bitter. You'll notice how the color of the ancho chili is lightened up a little bit. That indicates that it's lightly toasted. It's really delicious smelling in here. And I'm going to take the toasted chilies now over to the blender. And I'm going to put those in there, along with about a cup of water. A little piece of fresh ground corn masa, the same dough that's used to make corn tortillas with. If you don't have the fresh ground stuff, you could reconstitute some of the masa harina, the powdered stuff you can buy in the grocery store. And what makes yellow mole is a generous use of hoja santa leaves. They're not the easiest things for those of us cooking in the US to find. So if you want to make a recipe like this with the herbal qualities and you can't find hoja santa, I suggest a big handful of cilantro leaves. These I'm going to tear up and put into the blender jar with the chilies and the masa. Put the top on it and blend it smooth. Because those chilies aren't soaked, take a minute or two to blend this to the point that it's as smooth as you can get it. But in case I have some of those chili skins that have not been blended completely, I'm going to pour the mixture through a strainer and then let it go into chicken broth that I've heated over medium heat here. Now remember that corn masa that I blended in with the chilies is going to be the thickener for this. It'll thicken just like making a gravy. So I want to cook this and stir it all the time as it begins to thicken up. When the mole thickens, reduce the heat to about medium-low. Let it simmer for about 15 minutes. You'll need to stir it every once in a while, and then season it with salt. I'm all set up here to make the classic empanadas of yellow mole that you find everywhere in Oaxaca. They look like little turnovers. I've got the yellow mole finished here. I've let it cool off in the pot, and it should be thick enough. Well, it should look like a thick gravy. It should hold its shape sort of slightly in a spoon. I've got some cooked chicken that's been pulled apart into small shreds. Those delicious hoja santa leaves, and then I've got fresh ground corn masa. Now, some of you may understand the word empanada to refer to a turnover with a wheat flour dough. In Oaxaca, these are made with the fresh ground corn masa instead. And I've brought this masa from a tortilla factory that's near my house. It usually comes to me a little stiffer than what I need it to be to make these empanadas, because I want it to be like soft cookie dough almost. So I'm going to dribble in just a little bit of water, just a little, because a little goes a long way when you're kneading water into masa. Use my hands here to work it in. You really can't overwork this dough. And then give it a generous sprinkling of salt and knead it into the masa. A dough that is sort of soft like this but doesn't stick to your fingers will mean a finished empanada of yellow mole that's very tender. So I need about a little bigger than golf ball size piece. And I have a classic tortilla press here. Now in Oaxaca they make these large because they work with really huge tortilla presses. So I'm going to make this as large as I can using this standard size tortilla press. Put the ball of masa in there. Cover it with a second piece of plastic. There's one underneath there. This was just cut from a vegetable bag that I got in the grocery store. And then give a gentle press. I'm going to open it up and flip it around because these tortilla presses never press completely evenly. Give it another gentle press. Take off the top piece of plastic there. And then I'm going to put it onto the griddle, which I have heated to about medium-high heat. The front of it is a little cooler, so that's where I'm going to put this tortilla down. So with the tortilla in my left hand with the plastic, I'm going to unmold the tortilla onto my right hand. Lining it up with the fingers of my right hand, peel that plastic off and then lay it down like that on the griddle. After about 30 seconds, the tortilla will release itself from the griddle. Then dip your fingers into some water and run them around the exterior of that tortilla to moisten it slightly. A little off-center, lay a few shreds of chicken, top with a little mole, it doesn't take as much as you might think, and a few pieces of hoja santa leaf. Then fold it over and press it gently on the edges to sort of roughly seal it. Griddle bake these, well, probably longer than you would expect. They're going to take 8 to 10 minutes, and it'll get a kind of crunchy, crispy texture on the outside, beautiful and rustic. You'll need to flip them about every minute or so. When I think of traditional Oaxacan village tamales, my friend Abigail Mendoza comes to mind. She and her family make hundreds of these very traditional tamales every week for fiestas and for their restaurant Tlamanali in the town of Teotitlan del Valle, just outside of Oaxaca City. Es siempre un gran placer. In the courtyard of her home, Abigail stepped me through her version of yellow mole tamales. For a beautiful look, she likes to make them from blue corn masa. First, she rolled a ball from that simple salted masa, no fat added to this, and used a wooden tortilla press to flatten it out into a thin tortilla. Then she topped it with a generous spoon of her yellow mole, a couple of shreds of poached chicken. Then she folded in the sides. In this very traditional preparation, she folded a large fresh leaf from the corn plant in a specific pattern around the tamal until it was perfectly wrapped up. This is a little harder than it looks, but with a bit of her expert advice, I was able to wrap one up pretty well. We set those aside to steam later and began working on some black bean tamales. She likes to use a special small black bean from San Miguel del Valle, it's a nearby town, because it has a unique flavor that ends up as a beautiful, smooth black bean paste that's seasoned with epazote and avocado leaf. For these tamales, she started by making a white corn tortilla, again, no fat in the masa, topped it with the black bean paste, and folded the two sides in. A fresh avocado leaf dipped in the beans went on one side, then she flipped it over and placed the tamal into a soaked corn husk. Another avocado leaf was placed on top, along with another corn husk, and the package was complete. Once all the tamales were wrapped, it was time to steam them in a huge earthenware olla over a wood fire. She put the blue corn tamales in first. They went on a reed rack set over simmering water. Next went in the black bean ones. These classic tamales that can trace their history all the way back to pre-Columbian times were ready to eat after only about 20 minutes of steaming. But corn tamales aren't just for traditional, rustic, village preparations. Chef Pilar Cabrera is taking traditional corn tamales and making them upscale at her restaurant La Olla in Oaxaca City. On the rooftop terrace of her restaurant, she showed me her recipe for blue corn tamales in squash blossoms.
Now we have here the lard.
Yes. It's kind of soft. It's not, a lot of times we see lard that's really firm. This is softer than that.
We start to mix in.
Yes. I've noticed that it's already getting lighter in color.
Yeah. Okay, now you help me to put it.
I will. Okay.
Break it a little bit.
Like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I start mixing. Okay, this with it.
It's a beautiful color, kind of a gray blue.
Yeah. Now, help me with the salt.
Yes.
And now, we put the chipil.
Okay, now for the chipil, you've just taken the leaves off of the chipil.
Yeah.
And then there's some little flowers up there. So you just want to get the leaves and maybe some of the flowers.
Maybe some flowers.
Okay.
Okay. Inside of the squash blossom, we put the corn masa and then we wrap it.
Okay.
Okay.
With the filling and the squash blossoms all ready to go, Pilar prepared banana leaves by passing them over hot coals. This softens them up and releases an amazing aroma.
Okay, next step is...
Okay, we start to wrapping.
Okay.
I put a little bit of liquid here. You can
Just
use
water? Or do you use
water
stock?
or chicken broth.
Chicken broth, okay.
We put in the middle,
With the squash. Oh, these look beautiful.
and we make it
I
like
see.
a roll.
Uh-huh.
We put here.
Oh, and then we're going to tie them up.
Yeah.
Tied up in those fresh banana leaf wrappers, the squash blossom tamales looked absolutely beautiful. Now let's talk for a second about squash blossoms. You can grow them yourself. And you can take them off of any kind of squash plant in that huge family, anything from zucchini all the way to big jack-o'-lantern pumpkins. Now, there are two types of squash blossoms on every plant. There's the male blossom and the female blossom. In the kitchen, we use the male blossom. And let me look around and I'm gonna find, here's a male blossom so I can show you what that looks like. Okay. So what you look for is the pistil that's in the middle of that. And it looks very different than the female blossom. The female blossom is the one that's going to produce fruit, and we've got one right over here. You can see how incredibly different that looks on the inside, but you can also see that this one has been pollinated, so it's setting fruit and it's going to produce that butternut squash there. Now, off of 2 vigorous butternut squash vines at the height of the season, we'll harvest over a dozen male blossoms a day, which means that it's pretty easy for you to produce some absolutely delicious squash blossom quesadillas or maybe a squash blossom soup with roasted chili poblano. It's all within your reach. Pilar also wanted to show me a sweet tamal that's made with a type of pumpkin they call tamala. The pumpkin is cut into large pieces and cooked with Mexican cinnamon and that dark sugar that they call piloncillo. The whole thing takes about 45 minutes. As the pumpkin softens, it gets mashed and then the skins are removed.
Oh, it's all those flavors. They're just coming right up out of the pot. Beautiful with all the pumpkin. Okay.
When it's finished cooking, it's this beautiful dark color. This tamal batter was also made by whipping some lard and then stirring in the masa. This time it's made from yellow corn. Then our squash mixture was added to the masa along with some sugar. That batter was spooned into a corn husk. Some fabulous Oaxacan chocolate was tucked inside, and the corn husks were wrapped tight in a special way that makes them look like little presents. When we finished wrapping, Pilar lined the steamer with corn husk, and then we placed the tamales inside one by one to cook.
This is the moment that I have been waiting for. My mouth was watering just when we made these tamales. Now I get a chance to actually eat them. Now I'm going to go to the savory one. I love squash blossoms so much because they're so beautiful to cook with, and they have that delicate kind of herbal flavor to them. It's going to be fun to have it in this one. This is so beautiful. Thank you.